So John, you're a state certified residential appraiser, and while you focus, your business now is more on the real estate sales side with our company, you still do hold an active appraiser's license, and you pay attention to what's going on in that industry, for education purposes and for, advising your clients. We've been seeing a trend of a lot of political debate and argument over what's going on in the appraisal industry. And a lot of consumers are, sometimes they don't really understand what happens. And I think, as realtors, we get into talking in acronyms. We say AMC and FHA and APR, yada, 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 and the consumer has absolutely no idea what we're talking about. But I wanted to talk to you about the independent appraisal process and what's happened over the last few years with how appraisals are managed, and specifically appraisal management companies. Kind of in your own words, would you explain what an appraisal management or an AMC is?
Sure. Basically, I'd like to speak on a couple points. First, to explain what an AMC is, it's basically, an offshoot of a lender where it's not the lender per se. It's really just, it's a company that is started so that they can
manage the process of the appraisal.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it says it is. And basically, from there, they're going to have their own in-house appraisers reviewing appraisals. Does this make sense? Are they looking at it like a buyer would look at it? And so basically, speaking to your other point of when we're talking to buyers, oh, I want a great deal, John, or I want a great deal, Andrew. Well, that is sort of the mindset of a year ago, and setting the people's expectations.
It's a lot different, and you're right. It is. It's a year ago mindset, because if you're looking for that screaming, just screaming, smoking hot deal, it is just not out there as much anymore, and it's a little bit harder to find. So you're dealing with, more competition, not as good of deals. And again, that's not to say you can't get a good deal. Don't get me wrong, but it's not nearly as prevalent as it was a year ago. And I think when we talk about the appraisal, side of it, the AMCs, the complaint from a lot of people is that, that they're putting pressure on appraisers to have a certain viewpoint or vantage point to, to direct an appraisal a certain way. When you've done the appraisal side of things, have you felt that kind of, with some of their guidelines, have you felt that there was some steering there?
I've never been steered in any direction personally. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but what they are doing is cautioning appraisers to be less optimistic,
more pessimist,
more cautious.
Well, and again, there's some validity to that. We went through, our real estate market went through, almost a tragedy. It was just, really bad what happened. So I can understand it from some perspectives. However, we're past it. All the data we're looking at now starts to show positive signs. I saw an appraisal report the other day on a listing that we had on the market. And the appraiser basically said everything was a declining market in that neighborhood. Yet, the average price in that neighborhood over the last 12-month period had grown 7%. The prices were actually rising, but he's still in 2009. He hasn't picked up a newspaper since Barack Obama got elected, and he hasn't been paying attention to what's been going on in the real estate market, and he says it's a declining market. He nixes the appraisal. It comes in low. And again, I don't know if it's just because, I really don't know how that can happen, but now we're dealing with challenging it and showing the data, and it's a big obstacle, and how the appraiser gets picked, where they come from. We've seen that a lot too, where you've got a house in Tampa and the appraiser's coming from Hernando County, who's got a phone number that from Jacksonville, and we're seeing that a lot, and then they don't know the local variables of that specific community or area.
Right. I also just wanted to add one thing. As an appraiser, we only have what the market offers us for data.
Right.
And basically an appraiser is a historian and, a presentation of the current snapshot of the market.
Right.
And depressed or declining markets will kill deals. So I don't know how that's happening. I'm sure there are some markets.
Well, and what's interesting is, so then on that same scenario, we had another appraiser go out and the differences of opinion. This guy saying it's increasing, this guy saying it's declining, and the difference between the appraised price was dramatic. And again, I get that it's an opinion. You know, we understand that. We're not trying to bash all appraisals. It's the process that I think is causing some problems, not necessarily any individual one person, and how that appraiser gets picked and how it's all set up. There's definitely a lot of challenges, and it's been, like we've talked about on prior shows, there's been a lot of heat on this issue, a lot of political debate about whether it should happen and how the system should be, you know, set up to, you know, to provide fair analysis. We're not, you know, as realtors, obviously we have a bias to our client. We're not wanting every deal to get thumbed up. You know, we know there has to be a check and a balance, but sometimes stuff just doesn't make logical sense.
Right.
You know?
Well, you know, when you're pricing a property for a listing presentation, you're going to use apples to apples.
Right.
You're not going to use a short sale with a retail sale.
Right.
For your comps, for your comparables.
Or if you do, because it's all there's an adjustment for condition and all those types of things that have to come into play.
That's correct.
So again, you're listening to the Duncan Duo Real Estate Show. We're going to continue talking about this and how you can help make sure your home gets appraised accurately if you're selling your home or purchasing a home. We're going to talk about that as well as some other topics and take your calls after a quick break here on the Duncan Duo Show on 970 WFLA.